Hi, my name is Charlotte Woodhead. I'm a lecturer in Society and Mental Health at King's College London. And my research interests lay in understanding, supporting and evaluating community-based approaches to public mental health. And my work primarily aims to reduce inequalities, particularly those experienced by young people, LGBTQ+, and racial and ethnic minority groups.
Hi, I'm Juliet. I'm a student at the University of Oxford, and I've been one of the young persons co-producing this study in collaboration with King's College London.
The issue topic that our project aims to address is around LGBTQ+ mental health. So sexual and gender minority young people are more likely to experience difficulties with mental health, so including things like depression, anxiety, self-harm, suicidal behaviour and substance use. And schools and school climate are really key to supporting LGBTQ+ young people, particularly in terms of their physical, emotional and social safety. So feeling like you belong at school, that you're accepted, that you're included and respected as you are is just so important. And among other things, stresses around coming out, being out at school, experiencing things like bullying, victimization from other students, staff not speaking up when they witness discrimination, bullying or harassment, lessons referring negatively to LGBTQ+ issues. All of these things have a really negative impact on mental health and wellbeing over time. Training for school staff is available from several organisations across the UK, but we don't really know much about their effectiveness in helping to prevent mental ill health. We don't know what young people want their teachers and other staff to know, and what training staff themselves, what staff themselves think they need to sort of better support their students. We don't really know much about why some schools might be more proactive or more able to take up training to support LGBTQ+ trainers and training and implementing that training. So we want to find out more about those sorts of barriers that some of the schools might face.
I think this project is really important to young LGBTQ+ people because when we get together as a community, we see that there are huge school-to-school and regional differences in how topics like relationships and sex education are addressed, and that this also influences young people's, obviously, mental health and coming out journeys, or many of them struggling with their sexuality. A good school versus a bad school can mean the difference between getting into a good university versus and having a good job versus not being very successful in life.
Through a series of interviews, focus groups and creative workshops that we'll be running online, we'll be talking to secondary school students, to school staff and to training providers. And we want to understand what training is already available to school staff to support LGBTQ+ students. And that includes, whether that training considers other aspects of their identity, such as race and ethnicity as well. And we'll compare this with what students and staff say is important to them. And we also aim to improve understanding about what makes it easier or more difficult for schools to access training. So things like funding, parental support, different local contexts, time pressures, and so on.
It takes a lot to get a project off the ground. It takes an ethics application, it takes designing a website, it takes making materials for school staff and all of the other people that we want to have focus groups and that we want to interview to gather all of this data on the effectiveness of relationships and sex education training.
We developed the idea and we designed the study on the basis of a series of discussion with young people. And the project itself is being co-led by a core team, and that includes university and peer researchers, young people who identify as LGBTQ+, and also third sector organisations representing young people. So the Mosaic Trust and also Jack Drum Arts in the North East. And so young people are involved in the project as partners, steering key decisions about all aspects of the study. And we're also looking to involve young people as we go through as peer researchers and advisory group members as well. So our focus on LGBTQ+ young people, explicitly including an intersectional perspective, so focusing on young people in lower income areas, racial and ethnic minority groups. We're supporting the network's aim of going to where that need is greatest. And we hope that a better understanding that's really grounded in young people's perspectives of how to help schools effectively create a supportive climate, a climate which is sensitive to local context and also to those multiple aspects of people's social identities, will really help towards preventing and intervening earlier on in the development of mental health difficulties.
The way we chose to conduct these focus groups and analyze people's school experiences has been, I think, very holistic, and definitely, especially when we're talking about mental health and disability, a lot of times that holistic, less clinical approach gets under recognized.
Bringing in all aspects of people's social identities is so important. We're not just one thing or another thing, and identifying people just on the basis of one thing isn't necessarily the most helpful thing when you're trying to support their mental health. So I'm glad that we are able to take that perspective in this project, and I'm just really glad to be working with young people who are so engaged and so knowledgeable, and not afraid to offer their opinion and to change how the studies run. As outputs, this project, we want it to be able to stand alone. So we will actively share our findings as specific recommendations related to the training needs important to young people and to school staff. And we'll make those recommendations available to training providers and to schools as well. And kind of the longer term ambition, towards the end of the project, we will be looking to produce together a more substantive funding application to apply for funds to actually formatively evaluate some of the changes to existing training that have been identified as important. So those are the two main outputs: the recommendations and the application for further funding for a larger project.
Young people on the team also wanted to do a few ancillary or more creative outputs, like a podcast potentially, or accessible web resources for young people, to make sure that this project reaches its widest possible audience.